I was supposed to stay silent and work like every other day. But in one moment, his hand struck my face in front of the entire room. Then he coldly said, "You're nothing here." 7 days later, I looked straight into the national television camera and said, "I'm the one who brought him into the light." Have you ever been so dismissed that you had nothing left to lose? Have you ever dreamed of the moment when the whole world would hear your voice? I used to be a shadow, but now I'm the one who made him disappear. My name is Grace Monroe, and for 3 years, I was the invisible woman of SkyPoint Strategies. 32 years old, single, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Everford, Missouri. That's the summary of my existence. Every morning, I'd take the 7:15 bus downtown, walk through the glass doors of our advertising agency, and dissolve into the background. My desk sat in the corner of the third floor, strategically placed where no executive would accidentally make eye contact with me. Perfect positioning for someone whose job title might as well have been professional ghost. I wasn't always this hollow shell in a pencil skirt. Once, I dreamed of being a writer. I had notebooks filled with stories, characters who lived fuller lives in my imagination than I did in reality. But student loans don't care about dreams. Rent doesn't wait for inspiration. So here I was, an assistant at an agency where creativity went to die, suffocated under spreadsheets and PowerPoint presentations. SkyPoint Strategies looked impressive from the outside, sleek furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place that photographed well for LinkedIn posts. But beneath that polished surface festered something rotten. Women here weren't colleagues. We were props. The prettier ones got paraded in front of clients. The rest of us, we were the machinery that kept everything running while the men took credit for our work. The unspoken rules were clear: smile, don't complain, wear heels but not too high, speak up but not too loudly, be smart but not smarter than them. I'd watch talented women get pushed out for being difficult, which usually meant they'd asked for equal pay or reported inappropriate comments. HR existed, technically, but everyone knew they were there to protect the company, not us. Then there was Clinton Varelli, my direct supervisor and the embodiment of everything toxic about this place. 6'2", early 40s, with that particular brand of confidence that comes from never facing consequences. His suits cost more than my monthly salary, and he made sure everyone knew it. Clinton had connections, golf buddies with the board, drinks with the CEO, the kind of relationships that made him untouchable. The rumors about him were like background noise we'd all learned to tune out. The assistant who'd left crying 2 years ago, the intern who'd filed a complaint that mysteriously disappeared, the account manager who'd requested a transfer after a business trip to Chicago. Nothing ever stuck to Clinton. He was Teflon in an Armani suit. He had this way of making you feel worthless without raising his voice. A slight pause before acknowledging you existed. The way he'd hand me work without looking up from his phone, like I was a piece of furniture. "Handle this," he'd say, dropping files on my desk. "Never please, never thank you, never my name." The other employees had learned to navigate around him like he was a piece of broken glass. The men laughed at his crude jokes. The women developed elaborate strategies to avoid being alone with him in elevators or conference rooms. We all knew the game, and we all played along because we needed our jobs. My family back in Ohio couldn't understand why I stayed. "Just keep your head down," my mother would say during our weekly calls. "Every job has its challenges. You're lucky to have steady work." My father's advice was even simpler: don't make waves. They belonged to a generation that believed suffering in silence was a virtue, that endurance was more valuable than dignity. But they didn't see what I saw every day. The way Clinton would critique women's appearances in meetings, how he'd assign impossible deadlines just to watch us scramble, the satisfaction in his eyes when someone broke down in the bathroom, and yes, he knew. He always knew. I kept a notebook hidden in my desk drawer. Not for stories anymore, those dreams had withered. This notebook contained dates, times, incidents, little degradations I'd witnessed or experienced. I told myself I was just documenting, not planning anything. Just writing it down made me feel less crazy, less alone. 3 years of this. 3 years of being invisible, Reliable Grace who never complained, never pushed back, never gave anyone a reason to really see her. I was the perfect victim, really. No spouse to notice if I came home upset, no close friends at work who might stand up for me. Just a shadow in the corner, doing her work, staying quiet, slowly disappearing into myself. Some days, I wondered if Clinton even knew my last name. He was about to learn it. He just didn't know it yet. The humiliation started small, like paper cuts you don't notice until they're bleeding. "Monroe, this coffee tastes like shit. Make another pot." Clinton would say it loud enough for the entire floor to hear, even though making coffee wasn't my job. I'd stand up, walk to the break room, and brew another pot while feeling 20 pairs of eyes on my back. Nobody said anything. They just returned to their screens, grateful it wasn't them. Then came the public corrections. He'd wait until we had an audience, a client meeting, a team briefing, to point out mistakes that weren't even mine. "Monroe here forgot to include the Q3 projections," he'd announce, knowing full well he'd never asked for them. I'd apologize, take the blame, watch him shake his head like I was a disappointing child. The clients would give me pitying looks. My coworkers would avoid eye contact. The worst part? I got good at predicting his moods. Mondays after a losing weekend for his fantasy football team meant I'd be rewriting reports that were already perfect. Thursdays before his custody weekends meant personal errands disguised as urgent client needs. I became an expert at reading the tension in his jaw, the way he'd drum his fingers when looking for someone to torment. 3 weeks before everything changed, Clinton assigned me to the Hartman Industries campaign. It was a major client, a multi-million-dollar account that usually went to senior associates. He dropped the brief on my desk on a Wednesday afternoon, giving me 48 hours to prepare a full presentation. "Think you can handle it, Monroe?" He didn't wait for an answer. "Don't embarrass me." No guidance, no team support, no access to the previous campaign materials. I worked until 3 a.m. both nights, survived on vending machine food and bathroom sink coffee. I called in every favor I had, begged ET for database access, taught myself design software through YouTube tutorials at 2 a.m. My hands shook from exhaustion as I formatted the final slides. Friday morning, I placed the presentation on his desk. 40 slides of market analysis, creative concepts, budget breakdowns. It wasn't just good, it was exceptional. I knew it. I'd poured everything I had into those 48 hours. Clinton flipped through it for 30 seconds, then he dropped it in his trash bin. "This is amateur hour. Monroe, did you even read the brief?" He pulled out a different presentation, one clearly prepared by someone else, probably weeks ago. "I'll have to use the backup. You're lucky I don't let Hartman know how incompetent my assistant is." The meeting was that afternoon. I sat in the back of the conference room, taking notes I didn't need to take, watching Clinton present my ideas with minor modifications. The clients loved it. They specifically praised the social media strategy, the one I'd developed at 2:47 a.m., running on nothing but spite and Red Bull. "Brilliant work, Clinton," Mr. Hartman said, shaking his hand. "This is why we stick with SkyPoint." Clinton's eyes found mine across the room. He smiled. Not a proud smile, not even a cruel smile. It was worse. It was dismissive, like I was a bug he'd already forgotten stepping on. That night, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine I couldn't taste, staring at my laptop screen. My mother had sent another email. "How's work, sweetie? Dad says hello. Remember, good things come to those who wait." Wait for what? To disappear completely? To become so small that one day I'd just stop existing altogether? I opened my hidden notebook and wrote down every detail of the Hartman presentation theft. Times, dates, the security camera that would have caught me working late, the email trails I'd carefully BCC'd to my personal account. I wasn't planning anything, I told myself. Just documenting. The next Monday, Clinton was in rare form. A female junior executive had been promoted, someone who'd started after me but had the advantage of an MBA and a father who knew people. Clinton spent the morning making jokes about diversity hires and quotas. loud enough for everyone to hear, but careful enough to maintain plausible deniability. Must be nice, he said, catching my eye as I delivered reports to his office. Some people get ahead on merit, others. He shrugged, letting the implication hang. I wanted to scream that I had merit, that I was smart, capable, that I could run circles around half the people here if given the chance. But my throat closed up, like it always did. The words stayed trapped inside, rotting. Yes, Mr. Varelli, I said instead. He laughed. That's what I like about you. Monroe. You know your place. My place, 3 years, and my place was still at the bottom of his shoe. Something to scrape off when convenient. I returned to my desk, added another entry to my notebook, and stared at the accumulation of small violences that made up my professional life. Something had to break. Either Clinton or me. I didn't know yet that we were 1 week away from finding out which. Tuesday, October 15th, 2:47 p.m. I remember the exact time because I'd been watching the clock, counting down minutes until the Hartman review meeting ended. The conference room was full. 12 people around the polished table. 3 more dialed in on video. Mr. Hartman himself had flown in from Dallas, bringing 2 senior VPs. This was supposed to be Clinton's triumph, the meeting where he'd lock in the expanded contract. It wasn't going well. These numbers don't add up, Hartman said, frowning at his tablet. The social media engagement you promised versus what we're seeing, there's a 40% gap. Clinton's neck flushed red. He shuffled papers, pulled up slides, talked faster. But Hartman wasn't buying it. The VPs exchanged glances. The room filled with that particular silence that precedes corporate disaster. We expected better from SkyPoint, Hartman said finally. Especially from you, Clinton. You assured us this campaign would deliver. That's when Clinton's eyes found me. I was sitting in the corner, laptop open, taking minutes like always. Invisible until he needed someone to blame. The execution issues stem from my assistant's incompetence, he said, his voice carrying that dangerous calm I'd learned to fear. Monroe was responsible for coordinating the social media implementation. I gave her clear instructions, but clearly, she wasn't up to the task. Every head in the room turned to me. My mouth opened, but no words came. The lie was so brazen, so complete. I hadn't even been given access to the social media accounts. But who would believe me? Stand up, Monroe, Clinton commanded. I stood. My legs felt like water. Tell Mr. Hartman how you failed to execute the timeline I gave you. My voice cracked. I didn't. She didn't even follow the basic posting schedule. Clinton interrupted, walking toward me. I've had to babysit her through every step. It's embarrassing, frankly. Hartman was watching me now. His expression unreadable. The VPs looked uncomfortable. Someone coughed. Clinton stood 3 feet away, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and suffocating. I should have fired you months ago, he said, his voice rising. You're incompetent, you're careless, I never had access to those accounts, I heard myself say. The room went silent. Clinton's face changed. The mask of corporate composure cracked, and underneath was something raw and ugly. Excuse me? I was never given access to the social media accounts. I have the emails where I requested. The slap came so fast I didn't see it. Just felt the explosion of pain across my left cheek, the shock that knocked me sideways. My laptop crashed to the floor. The room gasped collectively. Someone actually stood up. But Clinton wasn't done. He grabbed my shoulder, steadying me, and leaned in close enough that only I could hear him clearly, though his words carried. You're nothing, he said. You're absolutely nothing. And nobody who should be grateful I even let you in this building. Then, louder, for everyone. Get out. You're done here. I touched my face. My fingers came away with a tiny smear of blood where his wedding ring had caught my cheek. The room was frozen, a tableau of shock and disbelief. Hartman's mouth was actually open. One of the VPs had her phone out, maybe recording, maybe calling security. I couldn't tell. but nobody moved to help me. Nobody said anything. I bent down, picked up my laptop, screen cracked but still functioning, and stood back up. Clinton was breathing hard, his face flushed, finally realizing what he'd done. But the arrogance was still there, the certainty that this too would blow over like everything else always had. I looked him in the eye. Then I looked at Hartman, at the VPs, at my coworkers who'd witnessed this. I memorized their faces, their expressions, their silence. "Thank you," I said quietly. Clinton blinked. "What?" "Thank you for finally showing everyone who you really are." I walked out of the conference room with my broken laptop and my throbbing face. Behind me, voices erupted. Damage control, probably. Clinton making excuses, HR being called, the machinery of corporate cover-up grinding into motion. I made it to the bathroom before the shaking started. In the mirror, my cheek was already swelling, a perfect red handprint like evidence. I took out my phone and took a photo. Then another from a different angle. Then a video, describing what had just happened while it was fresh, while my voice still shook with rage instead of fear. Someone knocked on the bathroom door. "Grace, it's Linda from HR. We need to talk." I bet they did. There would be forms to sign, NDAs to consider, a generous severance package contingent on my silence. They'd make this go away like they'd made everything else go away. But as I stared at my reflection, at the mark he'd left on me, the visible proof of what I'd endured for 3 years, something crystallized inside me. I wasn't nothing. And in 7 days, everyone would know it. "I'll be right out," I called to Linda, pulling out my personal phone. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I'd saved months ago, but never had the courage to use. Maya Cruz, investigative journalist. I typed quickly. "I have a story for you, a big one. Can we meet tonight?" Her response came in seconds. "Yes." "Where?" Clinton thought he'd ended me in that conference room. He was wrong. He'd just set me free. The first 24 hours were crucial. I knew that from every corporate scandal I'd ever watched unfold. Evidence disappears. Witnesses develop amnesia. Stories get rewritten. Linda from HR had offered me 2 weeks paid leave to recover from the unfortunate incident. She'd said "unfortunate incident" 5 times in a 10-minute conversation, never once saying "assault" or "Clinton hit you." The paperwork she'd pushed across her desk included a clause about not discussing internal matters on social media. I signed nothing, took the leave, and walked out with my box of desk belongings. That night, I met Maya Cruz at a diner 40 minutes outside Everford, far enough that no one from Skypoint would accidentally see us. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 28, with sharp eyes and calloused fingers from constant note-taking. "Show me," she said, no preamble. I showed her the photos of my face, the video I'd recorded. Then I pulled out my notebook. 3 years of meticulous documentation. She read in silence for 20 minutes, occasionally photographing pages with her phone. "This is good," she said finally. "But Clinton Varelli has lawyers. Skypoint has deeper pockets. We need more than just your word against his." There were 12 witnesses, who all want to keep their jobs. She leaned forward. "But you're not the only one he's done this to, are you?" I thought about the crying assistant, the transferred manager, all those women who'd simply disappeared from Skypoint's ecosystem. "No." "Then find them." The next 4 days blurred together. I became a detective of my own life. I started with LinkedIn, tracking down former Skypoint employees. The crying assistant, Jennifer Walsh, now lived in Portland. The intern who'd filed the complaint was Sarah Kim, working in Chicago. The account manager from the business trip was Diana Reeves, who'd started her own firm in Boston. The first 2 hung up on me. Diana listened. "He cornered me in the hotel bar," she said, her voice steady but tired. "When I reported it, they offered me a promotion to shut up. When I refused, they made my life hell until I quit. Would you go on record?" Long pause. "I have emails, screenshots." "But Grace, I have a business now. I can't." "I'm not asking you to be the face of this. I said. Just back me up. Show them I'm not lying. One by one, they started talking. Jennifer had kept recordings of Clinton's voicemails. Sarah had saved the HR complaint that supposedly never existed. Diana had text messages from 3 other women warning her about Clinton before that Chicago trip. On day 3, I got an unexpected call. Is this Grace Monroe? Male voice, nervous. Yes. I'm Tom Fitzgerald. I was in the conference room when it happened. I have a video. My heart stopped. A video? I started recording when Hartman began pushing back. I thought it might be useful for the meeting notes. I caught everything, Clinton hitting you, what he said, everything. Why are you calling me? Because I have a daughter, he said simply. And I've watched Clinton do this for 2 years. I should have said something before. I'm sorry. Tom sent me the video through an encrypted app Maya had taught me to use. It was clear, undeniable. Clinton's hand connecting with my face, the sound it made, my laptop falling. His words, "You're nothing." On day 5, Maya introduced me to a lawyer named Carmen Valdez who specialized in workplace assault cases. She watched the video once, read through my documentation, and said, "We're going to bury him." "I don't want money," I said. "No." Carmen agreed. "You want justice. That's harder, but much more satisfying." Day 6 was preparation. Maya had pitched the story to Behind the Suits, a nationally syndicated investigative show that exposed corporate corruption. They wanted me live, in studio, telling my story without edits or corporate spin. "You'll be nervous," Maya coached. "That's good. Don't try to hide it, but also don't let them see you cry. Tears make you a victim. Steady anger makes you a survivor." I practiced in front of my bathroom mirror. My name is Grace Monroe. On October 15th, my supervisor, Clinton Varelli, struck me in front of 12 witnesses and told me I was nothing. Over and over until I could say it without my voice shaking, SkyPoint tried to get ahead of it. On day 6, they announced Clinton had been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. They leaked to local press that there had been a misunderstanding during a heated meeting. Clinton's lawyer released a statement about false allegations and money-seeking disgruntled employees. But they didn't know about Tom's video. They didn't know about Jennifer and Sarah and Diana. They didn't know about the 11 other women who'd reached out to me in 6 days, each with their own Clinton story. Most importantly, they didn't know that Maya had been investigating SkyPoint's toxic culture for months before I ever called her. I was just the spark that lit the fuse she'd already laid. The night before the show, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the mark on my face that had faded to a sick yellow-green. My phone buzzed with text after text, some supportive, some threatening, some from numbers I didn't recognize warning me to think carefully about my next steps. I thought about my mother's voice. "Don't make waves." I thought about Clinton's voice. "You're nothing." I thought about my own voice, silent for 3 years. Tomorrow. That silence would end. Tomorrow. I would speak not just for myself, but for Jennifer and Sarah and Diana and the 11 others and probably dozens more who hadn't found the courage to reach out. 7 days. That's all it had taken to transform from nothing into something Clinton Varelli would never see coming. His reckoning. The studio was smaller than it looked on TV. Colder, too. I sat in the makeup chair at 5 a.m. while a woman named Denise covered the last traces of bruising on my cheek. "You want me to leave it visible?" she asked quietly. "Sometimes it helps to show." "No," I said. "I want them to listen to my words, not stare at his mark." Maya was there, standing by the monitors with the show's producer, a woman named Rebecca Chen who'd built her career exposing corporate abuse. They'd already told me the format. No pre-recorded segments, no edits, just me in conversation with the host, Marcus Williams, for 12 uninterrupted minutes. "The video will play behind you at specific moments," Rebecca explained. "You don't need to narrate it, just keep telling your story." At 6:30 a.m., Clinton's lawyer made one last attempt. My phone rang. Carmen Valdez, They're offering 2 million, she said. All you have to do is not go on air. No. 3 million? Grace, that's life-changing money. My life already changed when he hit me. Tell them no. At 6:45 a.m., I got a text from an unknown number. You're making a mistake. We know where you live. I showed it to Maya. She smiled grimly. They're panicking. That's good. At 6:55 a.m., they mic'd me up. The little black box clipped to my skirt felt heavier than it should. Marcus Williams took his seat across from me, and up close, I could see the kindness in his eyes that made people trust him with their worst moments. You ready? He asked. No. I admitted. Good. That means you're human. Use it. At 7 a.m., we went live. This morning, we have an exclusive interview with Grace Monroe, whose story has begun to shake the foundations of one of Missouri's most prominent advertising agencies. Grace, tell us what happened on October 15th. The red light on the camera blinked. Somewhere. Maybe millions of people were watching. Maybe Clinton was watching. I thought of his face, that smirk when he'd called me nothing. I was sitting in a meeting, I began, my voice steadier than I'd expected. Taking notes, like I'd done for 3 years. My supervisor, Clinton Varelli, was being questioned by a client about failed metrics. Instead of taking responsibility, he blamed me for work I'd never been assigned to do. And then, I tried to defend myself, to explain that I hadn't been given access to the accounts he was blaming me for. That's when he walked over to me, in front of 12 witnesses, and slapped me across the face. Behind me, on the massive screen, Tom's video began to play. No sound yet, just the image. Clinton crossing the room, his hand rising, connecting, my laptop falling. The collective gasp of the room. He told me I was nothing. I continued. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that everyone in that room, people I'd worked with for 3 years, sat there in silence. No one stood up. No one said, stop. They just watched. Marcus leaned forward. Why do you think that was? Because Clinton Varelli had created a culture of fear. Everyone knew he was untouchable. He had connections to the board, to the CEO. He'd survived multiple complaints. We'd all seen what happened to women who spoke up. They disappeared. But you didn't disappear. No. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't stay silent. The screen behind me shifted to documents, my notebook pages, the emails from Jennifer and Sarah and Diana. Marcus walked through each piece of evidence methodically, building the case that this wasn't an isolated incident, but a pattern. SkyPoint has claimed this was a misunderstanding. Marcus said that tensions were high and, would you like to hear the audio? I interrupted. Marcus paused. This wasn't planned. Rebecca, off camera, nodded frantically. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the system Maya had shown me. Tom's video played again, this time with sound. Clinton's voice filled the studio. You're nothing. You're absolutely nothing. A nobody who should be grateful I even let you in this building. The silence after was deafening. That doesn't sound like a misunderstanding to me, I said. Marcus asked about the aftermath, the HR response, the attempts to silence me. I told him about the NDAs, the escalating offers, the threats. I told him about finding the other women, about discovering I was part of a pattern that stretched back years. Clinton Varelli is still on paid administrative leave, Marcus noted. SkyPoint hasn't fired him. Because they're hoping this will blow over, I said. They're counting on me being scared, on the other women staying silent, on their money and lawyers being louder than our voices. Are you scared? Terrified, I admitted. But I'm more scared of what happens if I stay silent. How many more women will sit in that corner desk after me? How many more will be told they're nothing? What do you want to happen now? I looked directly at the camera. I want Clinton Varelli to face consequences, real ones. Not a transfer to another department or a quiet resignation with a golden parachute. I want SkyPoint to acknowledge what they've enabled. And I want every person watching who's been told they're nothing to know That's a lie. You're not nothing. Your voice matters. Use it. The interview ended at 7:12 a.m., 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. As soon as the cameras cut, my phone exploded with notifications. Maya grabbed it before I could look. Don't, she said. Not yet. Let it build. But I caught a glimpse of the show's Twitter feed on a monitor. The video clip of Clinton hitting me already had 50,000 retweets. The hashtag, "You are not nothing," was trending. Rebecca came over, tears in her eyes. In 15 years of doing this show, that's one of the most powerful interviews I've ever aired. I didn't feel powerful. I felt empty. Like I'd poured everything out and had nothing left. But Maya was smiling, and Carmen was already on the phone with someone, speaking in rapid legal terms. What happens now? I asked. Marcus, still mic'd up, still in his chair, looked at me with something like admiration. Now comes the avalanche. The avalanche Marcus predicted came faster than anyone expected. By 8 a.m., the video had been viewed 2 million times. By noon, it was the lead story on every major news outlet. Executive strikes employee on camera ran across CNN's ticker. Fox Business debated corporate accountability. MSNBC had a panel discussing workplace violence. I sat in Maya's apartment, watching my face appear on screen after screen, hearing strangers dissect my life. Maya fielded calls while Carmen coordinated with law enforcement. Yes, assault charges were being considered. Yes, we had evidence. No, we wouldn't be dropping this. At 2 p.m., SkyPoint released a statement. Clinton Varelli had been terminated effective immediately. The CEO, Robert Hutchinson, expressed shock and dismay at the unprecedented incident and promised a thorough review of company culture. Bullshit, Maya muttered. Hutchinson knew. They all knew. The other women started going public. Jennifer Walsh gave an interview to the Portland Tribune. Sarah Kim wrote a viral LinkedIn post that got 100,000 shares in 3 hours. Diana Reeves announced she was filing a retroactive lawsuit against both Clinton and SkyPoint. But the real bombshell came at 4 p.m. Tom Fitzgerald, the man who'd filmed the assault, went on local news. I'm resigning from SkyPoint, he announced. I've been complicit in this toxic culture for too long. I watched Clinton Varelli abuse his power for 2 years and said nothing because I was comfortable, because I was protected, because I wasn't his target. That makes me part of the problem. Then he did something unexpected. He released an internal email chain from SkyPoint's executive team, dated 6 months ago, discussing the Clinton problem and deciding to monitor the situation rather than take action. Hutchinson's shock and dismay evaporated. By 5 p.m., 3 board members had called for his resignation. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Reporters, job offers, book deals, movie producers. Someone wanted to start a foundation in my name. Someone else wanted me to speak at their conference. The noise was overwhelming, but one call broke through. My mother. Grace, I saw the news, she said, her voice small. I didn't know. You never said how bad. I tried to tell you. I know. I'm sorry. I thought enduring was strength. But I was wrong. What you did today, standing up like that, that's real strength. By evening, You're Not Nothing had generated 17 million tweets. Women and men from around the world shared their own stories of workplace abuse, of being silenced, of being told they were nothing. A movement was crystallizing around those 3 words Clinton had spat at me. Clinton's lawyer released a statement at 7 p.m., claiming his client was seeking counseling and deeply regretted the misunderstanding. They were considering countersuits for defamation. Carmen laughed when she read it to me. Let them try. We have 12 witnesses and video evidence. He's finished. At 8 p.m., something unexpected happened. Hartman Industries announced they were pulling their entire account from SkyPoint, effective immediately. We cannot be associated with a company that tolerates such behavior, Mr. Hartman said in his statement. He also mentioned something that made me cry for the first time all day. Ms. Monroe's presentation ideas, which were wrongfully attributed to Mr. Varelli, were exceptional. We'd be honored to work with her directly should she choose to start her own firm. By 9 p.m., 7 more major clients had pulled their accounts. SkyPoint's stock price, which had dropped 12% during the day, was projected to fall further when markets opened. Maya turned off the TV. You need to sleep. Tomorrow will be bigger. How can it be bigger? Because tomorrow, Clinton gets arrested. She was right. The district attorney, facing public pressure and armed with Tom's video, filed assault charges. The image of Clinton Varelli being led out of his mansion in handcuffs at 7 a.m. would become iconic, his face no longer smug but hollow, his expensive suit replaced with shame. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, I sat in a stranger's apartment, wearing the same clothes I'd worn to the studio, trying to process how 7 days had transformed me from an invisible assistant to the face of a movement. My phone lit up with another text. This time, it wasn't a threat or a reporter. It was from a woman named Amy, someone I'd never met. I'm sitting in my car in my office parking lot, she wrote. I was going to quit today because my boss has made my life hell for 2 years. But I saw your interview. I'm not quitting. I'm fighting. Thank you for showing me I'm not nothing. I wrote back, you never were. The revolution hadn't been planned. It hadn't been orchestrated. It had been born from one moment of violence that became the final crack in a dam holding back years of suppressed rage and pain. Clinton thought he'd destroyed me with those words. You're nothing. Instead, he'd given millions of us a battle cry. The courtroom was packed the day Clinton Varelli was sentenced. 6 months had passed since that October morning when his hand struck my face. 6 months of depositions, testimonies, and revelations that went deeper than anyone had imagined. The assault charge was just the beginning. The investigation had uncovered years of financial irregularities. Clinton had been embezzling from client accounts to fund his lifestyle. The FBI got involved. Suddenly, it wasn't just about workplace violence. It was about fraud, conspiracy, and a network of corruption that reached into SkyPoint's highest levels. Clinton stood as the judge read the verdict. Gone was the Armani suit, the confident smirk, the casual arrogance. He looked smaller somehow. Diminished. Prison time for assault. More for embezzlement. His reputation destroyed, his assets frozen, his family gone, his wife had filed for divorce the day after his arrest. Mr. Varelli, the judge said, you used your position of power to terrorize and diminish those you considered beneath you. You told Ms. Monroe she was nothing, but it appears, Mr. Varelli, that when stripped of your borrowed power and stolen money, you are the one who amounts to nothing. I didn't feel triumph watching him led away in handcuffs, just empty, hollow, like I'd been running on pure adrenaline for months and suddenly had nothing left to fight. SkyPoint strategies didn't survive the scandal. Hutchinson resigned in disgrace after emails surfaced showing he'd known about Clinton's behavior for years. The company dissolved. Its assets liquidated to pay settlements to the 17 women who came forward with their own stories. I never went back to collect my personal items. Someone from the liquidation company mailed them to me. A coffee mug, a sweater, the notebook where I documented everything. I threw it all away except the notebook. That I burned in my sink, watching 3 years of pain turn to ash. The offers poured in. Speaking engagements, book deals, a documentary crew wanting to follow my journey of empowerment. Tech companies wanted to hire me as a consultant on workplace culture. A university offered me a position teaching business ethics. I turned them all down. You could make millions, Carmen had said, confused by my refusal. You could build an empire on this. I don't want an empire built on the worst day of my life. Instead, I took the settlement money, not the hush money they'd offered before, but the legitimate compensation for assault and years of hostile work environment, and I disappeared. Not completely, but enough. I moved to a small town in Oregon where nobody knew my face, I opened a tiny bookstore, the kind I dreamed about before life had pushed me into corporate servitude. I stocked it with stories about people who fought back, who stood up, who refused to be nothing. Maya visited me 3 months after I'd opened. "You could have been a symbol," she said, sipping coffee in my back office. "The face of change." "I was," I replied, "for exactly as long as I needed to be." She understood. The movement didn't need me anymore. You're Not Nothing had evolved beyond one woman's story. It had become thousands of stories, millions of voices. Laws were changing. Companies were being held accountable. The revolution I'd accidentally started was moving forward without me. And that was exactly right. Maya published her exposé on workplace abuse, dedicating it to all the Grace Monroes who haven't spoken yet. It won a Pulitzer. In her acceptance speech, she called me the quiet revolution, someone who didn't seek the spotlight but stood in it just long enough to illuminate the darkness for others. I kept one thing from my old life: the screenshot of that text from Amy, the stranger who decided to fight instead of quit. She wrote to me again, a year later. She'd won her case. Her boss was gone. She'd been promoted. She was mentoring young women in her company, making sure they knew their worth. "You saved my career," she wrote. "You saved yourself." I wrote back. The last I heard, Clinton was serving 7 years in federal prison. His name had become corporate shorthand for everything wrong with workplace culture. Business schools taught case studies about the Varelli incident. HR departments nationwide implemented Monroe protocols, mandatory reporting systems for workplace violence. I never sought any of that. I just wanted him to face consequences. I wanted SkyPoint to crumble. I wanted every person who'd been told they were nothing to know. They were wrong. Mission accomplished. On quiet mornings in my bookstore, when the sun slants through the windows and catches the dust motes dancing in the air, I sometimes think about that conference room, the crack of his hand across my face, the words that were meant to destroy me. "You're nothing." He was wrong. I was never nothing. None of us are. We're just sometimes too quiet, too scared, too beaten down to remember it. But we remember eventually. And when we do, the Clintons of the world better watch out. Because nothing is more dangerous than someone who's been told they're nothing and finally decides to prove otherwise. 2 years later, I sat in the same coffee shop where I'd once written my resignation letter that I never sent. The place hadn't changed. Same cracked vinyl seats, same bitter coffee, same view of downtown Everford through rain-streaked windows. But everything else was different. The SkyPoint building across the street was being demolished. I'd come back specifically to watch it fall. Not out of hatred or some need for symbolic closure, but curiosity. How strange that a place that had once loomed so large in my life could be reduced to rubble in a matter of hours. A woman at the next table kept glancing at me. Finally, she leaned over. "Are you Grace Monroe?" I'd stopped denying it months ago. "Yes. I worked on the 5th floor, accounting. We never met. But I was there that day, in the conference room." I remembered her now. Blonde hair in a tight bun, sitting by the window, her face frozen in shock when Clinton's hand connected with my cheek. "I'm sorry," she said. "I should have said something, done something. We all should have done things differently." She nodded, turned back to her coffee, then turned again. "I stood up to my new boss last week. He was berating an intern, and I just stood up and said, 'That's enough.' I kept thinking about you, about that day." "What happened?" He backed down, apologized. The intern thanked me later. She smiled sadly. "Such a small thing, but it felt huge." "The small things are huge," I said. "They're everything." We watched the wrecking ball hit the SkyPoint building. Glass shattered, concrete crumbled. By noon, 14 stories had become a pile of debris. They'd built something new there, condos, probably, or another glass tower full of people trying to survive their days. That evening, I caught my reflection in my hotel bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me wasn't the shadow who'd once hidden in the corner of the third floor. She wasn't the victim who'd been slapped in front of witnesses. She wasn't even the warrior who'd appeared on national television. She was just me, Grace Monroe, bookstore owner, survivor, human. My phone rang. Maya. Of course. There's another case, she said. Tech company in Seattle, multiple women, systemic abuse. They want to talk to you. I'm not that person anymore. You'll always be that person. You're the one who made it possible for others to speak. Give them my email. I'll write to them. But Maya, I'm not coming back to that world. I know. But Grace, what you did, it mattered. It still matters. After she hung up, I opened my laptop and started typing an email to the women in Seattle. Not advice on lawsuits or media strategies, but something simpler. You're not nothing. You never were. Whatever you decide to do, fight, leave, speak up, stay quiet, make the choice that lets you sleep at night. Make the choice that lets you look at yourself in the mirror. The world will call you brave or cowardly, smart or stupid. But the world doesn't have to live with your choices. You do. I sent it, closed the laptop, and went for a walk through downtown Everford one last time. Past the rubble of Sky Point, past the courthouse where Clinton had been sentenced, past the TV station where I'd given that interview. A young woman passed me, talking on her phone. I told him if he ever speaks to me like that again, I'm going straight to HR, and I'm recording everything. I smiled. She'd never know I was there. Never know she'd walked past the person whose story might have given her that courage. That was fine. Perfect, actually. The story had become bigger than me, and that's how it should be. On the plane back to Oregon, I thought about Clinton. Not with anger anymore, just a kind of distant pity. He'd had everything, power, money, respect, and thrown it all away because he couldn't resist crushing people he saw as beneath him. He'd called me nothing. But in trying to destroy me, he'd destroyed himself. The flight attendant recognized me. I could tell by the way her eyes widened, then softened. She didn't say anything, just brought me an extra coffee and squeezed my shoulder as she passed. These small kindnesses from strangers had become part of my life. Women who saw me as someone who'd fought back and won. But I knew the truth. There was no winning. Not really. Just surviving, speaking truth, and hoping it makes the path a little easier for the next person. I landed in Portland as the sun was setting, drove the 2 hours to my small town, unlocked my bookstore, watered the plants, straightened the shelves. Tomorrow, I'd open at 9 a.m. like always. Customers would come in looking for stories to escape into. Some would recognize me, most wouldn't. I'd recommend books, make coffee, host the weekly poetry reading. I'd built a small, quiet life from the ashes of a loud, terrible moment. Clinton was in prison, Sky Point was rubble. And I was here, surrounded by stories, finally writing my own. He'd said I was nothing. He was wrong. I was Grace Monroe. I was something. I always had been. I just needed someone to hit me to remember it. And that's the horrible, beautiful truth of it. Sometimes we don't find our voice until someone tries to silence it forever. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with those of you who've ever been told you're not enough, you're too small, or you're nothing. You're not. You matter. Your voice matters. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Leave a comment below and let's connect. Please subscribe to the channel if this story moved you and share your own thoughts and experiences. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply let others know they're not alone in their struggles. Until next time, remember, you are not nothing.